The idea is for this Third World War to involve Russia and China against the West.
Yeah. Oceania versus Eurasia. Yeah.
Yeah, the 1984 kind of scenario. And what you have now is the demonization of Russia. Have you noticed that? How suddenly we got the demonization of Russia? And what's opening up in the Ukraine, while all this is starting to go on in the Middle East, is another front against Russia. Because, it's very easy to see how Russia can be pulled into this Middle Eastern conflict by supporting Syria. Because destroying Syria is part of ISIS's agenda, and American agenda, and NATO's agenda.
And also Iran as well.
Yeah, and destroying Iran, yeah. So, and Russia would come out in support of Iran, and the same would happen with China. And so you can see how the pieces in the game are being moved around to create the scenario that Pike talked about. And the idea is to basically bring everything to its knees, so that the world would have to be rebuilt in its structure and the way it operates, and that would be in the image of what they've been working towards all along: world government, world central bank, world army, world currency, centralized control of the planet. It's very easy to see with current events how it's moving in that direction. And we need to understand what the goals are, to understand what the moves towards that goal are. And when you look at it from this perspective, what is happening in the Middle East is not random. None of it's been random. Libya's not been random. Syria's not been random. None of it. And ISIS certainly isn't random. It's part of this long-term plan to take over the world by creating enormous chaos to which they can offer the order out of the chaos, their order, their new world order.
Problem reacts to solution, order out of chaos. They set up the problem. The U.S. funds with NATO, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, ISIS, in Syria to go after Assad. They stop. Russia stopped the U.S. from attacking them, so they find a different way. Now ISIS is running loose. Israel, for the first time ever, is saying it's not even a problem. Meanwhile, they backed everything from the very beginning, and they're creating this awful situation. They're bringing Iran into it, meanwhile financing both sides of the situation. Iran is now fighting in Iraq, and China and Russia are standing by. They're being agitated in Ukraine with the bombing in Donetsk and Slavansk right now. Ukraine is pretty much asking for Russians to come over with all the bombs that they're dropping on them.
Yeah, in fact, a close aide of President Putin, who has special responsibility for Ukraine, has actually said this week that the United States is preparing for a war against Russia through Ukraine, and that what they plan is to try to take Crimea back. Now, you can have the odd bit of terrorism and bad things happen in Ukraine to Russian supporting people, and Putin can stay back and hold his fire because he knows what they're trying to manipulate him into. But if they try to take Crimea back, Putin's ego and Putin's pride will no way, I would strongly suspect, allow him just to let them do it.
Exactly.
And therefore, that if they try to take Crimea back, then what you're looking at is a war, or a calculated war against Russia. Yeah. And if you start a front against Russia on its borders, and then all this stuff going on in the Middle East, you are diluting Russia's impact on what's happening in the Middle East. Yeah. And it's all a setup. And when you have Saudi Arabia and Qatar, who are 51st states of the United States, there are many of those, mind, funding this ISIS and funding this terrorism, while the Americans, who could tell them to stop any time, are saying, are condemning the very terrorism that their 51st states are supporting. Well, the picture's so bloody obvious. It's a setup, and it's a setup to attempt to trigger World War III.
And that's why you see Russia trying to back their economy with gold. That's why they're making better business relations with China. They're selling oil to each other right now, and they're moving away from all this.
Yeah.
But Putin's ego is very strong. They could provoke him, and you don't know how Putin will respond. That's what they were discussing at the Bilderberg meeting just a few weeks ago when it came out, that they were discussing if they should raise the NATO defense budget. What should they do in Ukraine? And how can we understand Putin? How can we use the situation with Putin? It came out in the Bilderberg meetings that they're discussing this. So you can only imagine what NATO, arms dealers, oil oligarchs of the Western power elite are going to have an interest when it comes to important decisions like this. Is there anything else that we need to understand about this kind of creation of war that's happening right in front of our eyes?
Well, it's a progression. And you have to connect the dots to see the progression. Going into Afghanistan was stage one, justified by the lie about 9/11 and who was really behind it. Then they go into Iraq. That has created the situation where this ISIS can now run riot. They want to go down into Africa, and so they're creating terrorism all over Africa. And so one of the big blocks to what they wanted was Colonel Gaddafi. And so they had to get rid of him. That's what the Libya thing was about, where they trained, armed and funded rebels to attack the Gaddafi regime.
Al-Qaeda rebels at that when we're supposed to be fighting Al-Qaeda.
Exactly. To attack the Gaddafi regime. And when they responded, it was, he's killing his own people. No, he's responding to people you funded to attack him. And then these rebels and others then moved into Syria after they'd done the thing in Libya, and they did the same there. And they thought that Syria would go like Libya, but it hasn't. That's been a big problem for them. And when they wanted to, because they were behind the time, they wanted to push that on. And that's when they did the chemical weapons scam, which was not Assad's work at all. That would have been suicide. He's not that stupid.
It worked in Iraq once, and then Russia came in, stepped in, blocked it off, and also popular support stopped the war in Syria.
Yeah, and popular rejection of bombing another country stopped that being pushed on. So they're behind time on Syria. But that moves then into ISIS. By arming ISIS, the Americans allow them to also supply the terrorists in Syria, which they also control. It's all unfolding with the magician behind, or the puppet master behind the scenes. And when we realize that, we can see that events are not random, but coldly calculated. These people are sheer, undiluted evil.
Party of Satan.
And people need to understand that. Otherwise, they will reject that anyone could do what they're doing and kill and maim and slaughter so many people. They can do it because they have no heart, they have no empathy, they have no emotional compassion, and thus mayhem is their currency, and they have no emotional consequence. They are not like us. So don't judge what they'll do by what you would do, because it ain't the same thing.
To understand the future, we have to understand the past. David, thank you.